Welcome to the Play Ed 3 podcast, where you're the reoccurring guest, whether you're in the classroom or shaping education behind the scenes. I'm Tisha Poncio.
And I'm Rick Butterworth. Together, we bring stories, insights, and conversations that matter to educators, learners, and change makers. Our goal is to bring everyone together to learn, grow, and play. Welcome to another episode of the Play Ed 3 podcast. My name is Rick, and as always, I am here with my co-host, Tisha. Tish, quick question for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
So obviously, I know that schools have finished in the US.
Yeah.
You always finish a lot earlier than we do in the UK. But it just came to me because this last week, some of our students have been finishing their GCSEs and their A-levels. So
explain what GCSEs and A-levels are for the people listening.
They're like, what's the major exam you have before college? What's that called?
Like SAT, ACT?
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So A-levels are more for the college university. GCSEs is more for your sixth form and what we call college.
Okay.
So students are now starting to finish that. And then we finish like end of July usually. We get a nice short summer because we don't have a summer. But the question was, obviously, being a veteran teacher, what was something that you always looked forward to when it came towards the end of school? And I'm not going to ask you to say the last day of school.
Well, I mean, that would be a very common answer for teachers. And I'm not sure I need to I have clarifying questions. If you know me, you know I'm always going to ask a question because I need to clarify. Are you talking about before the last day of school, or are you talking about when I get home after the last day of school? Which side are we talking about? Because those are.
I was thinking before, but now you've got me intrigued with what's the first thing you're going to do after.
I'll answer both because I think, our guest will agree. And as soon as I do her intro, she's going to tell you all about it. But I think she will agree. So before the last day of school, I think what I looked forward to the most was this slowdown of the grind with my students. And I know that doesn't make sense because the end of the year is so busy and there's so many things you have to finish up in the grades and there's just so much happening in the classroom to wrap things up. From a teacher perspective, from a student perspective, especially if you have seniors, and if you are like a sponsor of graduation or right? That is something that we actually talk in the book. Interestingly enough, in the chapter that our guest is highlighted in, we do talk about that teachers have extra duties. And I think sometimes we forget. We don't talk about that very much. On top of everything else that they're doing, they're either a prom sponsor, if they're a senior sponsor, they're helping with graduation, right? If they're a sophomore sponsor, there's a whole bunch that goes into that. If they're a freshman sponsor, they're just trying to get them to understand the rules of high school. It's like a very interesting thing. But at my school, we rotated, right? So if I was a freshman one year, the next year I'd be a sophomore, and I would be a sponsor all the way up, and you'd loop around. Plus you'd have bus duty and lunch duty. And I mean, there's so many extra pieces that I don't think people truly understand. Your day as a teacher is not really your day. Like, your day is dedicated to serving everybody else all day. So at the end of the year, there usually feels like there is a release or a light at the end of the tunnel. And so you wake up and you're like, I'm going to get there. I can see it. I can taste it's almost there, right?
It's the light at the end of the tunnel, basically.
But with the students, I felt like there was also a release for them. They weren't as stressed, maybe. Some of them were, and we can talk about that with our guests, because if you think about it, some of the students, school is their safe haven. So while we were celebrating the end of school, there are definitely students who are fearful of the end of school. So this is a great topic. Look, Rick, you've opened up a whole thing here.
I'm just full of amazing questions and everything. I already know. I know.
But let's talk about the after the last day of school for a second, because I keep seeing TikTok videos and I relate to this so much. Now, if you are listening and you are an extrovert, you may not feel what I'm about to say, but if you're an introvert or an ambivert or whatever you are, you're talking to hundreds of people all day long as a teacher, Rick. I just want you to imagine that for a second. Every single place you go is consumed by someone. And even going to the restroom, the loo, you may not make it. you just may not make it there. You're on your way, but somebody has an emergency that you got to take care of. So it's very interesting. After you get home and it's the last day, there is such a release of stress that you didn't realize how stressed you were. And a lot of times teachers' bodies will go into this like, oh my God, you've put me through stress mode all year. Now I'm suddenly going to be sick because I've been holding it in for a whole year. I mean, I'm not even kidding. So some teachers are sick right after school. For me, and this is true every year, every single year, it would get to the point and I would be like, I can't believe it. I can sleep in tomorrow. And I would, for the first week, sometimes not be a functional part of society for at least a week. Unless I had to be somewhere and had to get dressed and had to put on makeup. I was literally just sleeping and resting, and my body was just trying to regulate. And I think there's so much that you bring into this particular topic that we can talk about. And I think it's time for us to introduce our guest with this.
I think it's perfect timing.
So our guest today, Rick, is none other than Stacie White. She is a junior high CTE teacher. So you're going to know why I love her, because we have that in common. She's also from Texas. She's from Longview, Texas. She's
Am I just going to get a list of things where I'm just going to be ticking off, yep, that one, yep, continue.
Yeah, she's part of the Pine Tree Independent School District, and she facilitates something that y'all know I'm passionate about. It's career explorations. So she does this course where, and she's designed it, it's a project success. She's so much that she can share about this. And I want to tell you before I hand the mic over to her, because I'm going to give her a really, really great intro. And this is very unique to Stacie, but she'll tell you, I don't remember where I was presenting, but I remember presenting something. And I'm sure it was a presentation for Wakelet in some capacity.
Okay.
But I remember Stacey White sitting in the audience. And I remember seeing, and if you're a veteran teacher, you know what I'm talking about. You can see it. You can be standing in front of your students or your group of teachers, and there is a light bulb above them. And I remember everything I was saying, she was nodding. And then she sat in her chair well after the presentation was over, taking notes, thinking through, ideating, being curious. And I went and had a conversation with her. And I remember talking to her thinking, she is so passionate about what she does, and she is doing some incredible work in the classroom. And why does nobody know? Because I had never met Stacey White. I didn't know she was doing the things I was doing. And it was in that moment that I was like, our paths have intersected for a reason. When we got ready to do the book, I said, Stacie, I want you to share what you're doing. And of course, that's what's led her here today, Stacie White. I'm so excited to have you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Tell us, let's have you answer Rick's question. What is something that you look forward to before the last day? And then what do you do after the last day?
So, our project, which I'm sure we'll get into later, our project, The Employer's Choice, finishes up at at the very end of school. So we have about a week of school left after that project finishes. And, so the whole year builds up until this part of this project that we have. So we all look forward to that. And I look forward to seeing my kids succeed. And I look forward to all of the things that are going on in their head and spending that time with them and really getting to dive deep. But then that week afterwards is really nice because we can all just take a breath.
It is.
And then we kind of have a lot of powwows in my room at that point. And we just sit around and we talk about, hey, what went well? What did you like? Tell me about all of the things that we've done. How can I make them better? What are some things that really impacted you? And we just kind of reflect for a whole week. And so it's a great way to sum up the end of the year. And that's it's really it's amazing. But at the same time, it's very bittersweet because now I'm giving my students to other people and to other teachers. And it's sad because we've built that whole relationship all year long. But I'm very happy for them. And then I'm very happy to kind of end that chapter and then start working on the next one because it's never ending.
I think that's really interesting. As you were saying that, I've never thought of it necessarily in that way, that we as teachers are pouring into all of those relationships all year, every day, every moment. And there is something to be said about a grieving process, sort of like you said.
Mhm.
You're sending them on their way. And for the students, I think, they are sad to leave us, but they're going on to something better. For us, we're still, a lot of us in our classrooms doing the same thing, and we never get to see the evidence of the growth that we've really poured into, right? And so I think that grieving process, like I said to Rick earlier, that is part of why at the end of the year, you are having to just let your mind, body, spirit, and everything just rest, because it
Mm,
is like it's the end of a chapter. You're giving yourself some time, but you're already thinking about the next year, right? So it is. It's always moving. Um, well, Rick, I think she should tell us a little bit about her class and her project, because I know we're going to get
yes.
into these details. So, Stacie, just take it away with this really cool project that is actually in. I have it right here. I know you're surprised. I have it right here. It is chapter 9. Chapter 9 is all about teaching beyond tradition. And we are talking to teachers specifically who are creating transformational teaching opportunities, learning opportunities for their students.
Mhm.
And Stacie has a very, very long quote in here. I'm actually going to read it. I don't do this very often. But Rick, someone did ask me to read our whole book as an audiobook, so I thought that was a nice compliment.
That is a very nice compliment. You're the one that's definitely doing the reading, because the
Well,
recording will be about 7 days long if you have me read it. So,
okay, so because of the nature of our class, Stacie says we hold a lot of discussions about various topics. Then we complete reflection activities that accompany the discussions, which helps kids to analyze their own behaviors, seek reasoning for them, and make changes where necessary. Reflections also encourage students to learn to identify problems and find solutions, which then helps them to apply the process personally, socially, and within our community. In my experience, kids learn better when they are guided to think and see the purpose of their learning, for their learning. When they can see the problem and recognize the need for the solution, that's really good. Recognize the need for the solution, they are more likely to intrinsically begin building the skills necessary to be a leader and a problem solver. And if you want to hear more about what Stacie's doing with her students and about this project, you obviously can go grab your copy of the book. It's on Kindle, but you also can hear from Stacie right now. She's going to tell you all about it. So, Stacie, how did you start this project? I think what did you do before this project? What were you doing before? What was your passion before? And how did you come to this realization of what you're doing with students now?
So the course is actually only 3 years old. And
Wow.
I was I my principals came to me and said, "Hey, we've got this opportunity. We think you would be great at it. And by the way, we want you to teach, employability skills. We want you to teach what the kids need to know to be successful, but we don't have anything for you." So I was like,
I feel like all the educators listening right now have been in that scenario once or twice. And Rick,
yeah.
because Rick has not been on the side of the teacher, he's been
no.
on the side of business and entrepreneur and all of that. But it is very similar in business, because it does happen. I say this all the time. You, as a teacher, are so well equipped to become an
Mm.
entrepreneur and to work in any of those spaces, because on a daily basis, and I used to not think that Stacie's a teacher. I thought, this principal is out of his mind, her mind, because you want me to create something magical from nothing. And that's essentially what they're asking you to do, right? With this course. So how did you go about finding all of the things you needed and all of the people?
So, I started with backwards design, and I was like, okay, well, we need to have something to work towards. So, how do I want them to show their learning, number one, and then what do I want them to learn, kind of as a part of that. And if we want our kids to be successful and we want them to have good careers and we want them to be productive members of society, then we need to train them on how to do that. And so what does that look like? Right? Like, so when you put your ideal employee together, it doesn't matter what field they're in, what does that look like? And so I started kind of building this person, right? The student, and what that would look like. And then I thought, okay, well, how can we share their learning? Like, how can they teach me what they know? Because this isn't something that we can test. I mean, I don't know about anybody else. I had to take some qualifications tests to be a teacher, but I don't have to take any additional tests. Like,
Right.
that's not a part of my job. So I don't know of many other careers that just have to test all the time.
Right.
And so that's not what I wanted for these kids. They need to show their learning in other ways. And so I came up with the idea to have them interview in front of different people in different career fields and different things as a part of our community to kind of get the community involved and to show the kids actual examples of people within the career fields that they're kind of dabbling into. And then I was like, okay, well, they have to be able to show all of these things. So they need a portfolio of sorts, right? And at first that just looked like a Google folder. And then I moved into Wakelet, and that has been amazing to be able to have that kind of a digital portfolio that they can really design and add a whole bunch of things to. You know, just having a Google Drive, you can't put videos, you can't do all these other things. But Wakelet kind of opened up those doors and allowed them to be more individual and to make it their own. And so that was really neat to be able to send the portfolios out to the judges and have them be able to see their personality kind of shine through with that. And then it kind of just went backwards from there. Okay, so if we want them to be able to interview, we need to add that in, interviewing skills. If we want them to be able to build a resume, because that's really important, we need to build that in. And then we wanted them to be able to be responsible financially. So we need to build that in, right? I mean, there are some of us out there who were taught financial responsibility from our parents, but the majority of the kids are just not. And it's shown, I think, in a lot of our generation too, where we have a ton of credit card debt. We live paycheck to paycheck, and that's what our kids are seeing. And so if our kids are seeing that, then they're seeing that that's okay. And that's not okay. Like, we should have more financial freedom, and they need to be able to see how to do that. And so I go through a big unit on financial literacy, and then kind of backing that up. Okay, so let's talk social skills. If we need our kids to be successful in a work environment, what does that look like? They need to be able to build those relationships, understand where boundaries are, draw their own boundaries, and stay within those boundaries to have relationships in a work environment that are professional and encouraging and allow everybody to do their best, right?
Yeah.
So what better book is there than The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're talking about one of the most well-known self-help books out there, and they have one that is geared specifically for teenagers,
Teens.
kind of dealing with what they're going through. So it's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, and we do that the whole first semester, where the kids they figure out what their mission statements are, they figure out what their goals are, they make plans to get to those goals. And it's really good. We do a whole lot of team building activities. They figure out how to actually build groups of people that are successful, because we know what non-successful groups look like. You know, I think everybody's been a part of at least one of those, especially the kids, for various projects and things. So what does it look like if you could build your own group? You had this as your goal. Who do you need in your group? And then so they get to learn how to interact synergistically and make teams that are actually highly functioning. And then give back to the community, of course. So we teach that a lot. I interact community service into this course all throughout, because there's no point in actually being a member of society if you're not going to give back to that next generation. And when we talk about that, we're looking at our kids, our students right now, like my junior high students need to learn that for their kids. Like
Yeah.
that's how we move forward. And so if we're not teaching those community service skills and activities and the intrinsic reward that we get from that, then we might as well not even, because it's not going to leave a better society as we keep going up. So it's all about, for me, it was just backwards design. And it was an opportunity to design something that I'm super passionate about, number one, obviously, but also that I knew would make a difference. Because, I mean, let's just be real, y'all. I don't use Algebra 2, like, ever.
That's her hot take, Rick. To make a note of it. Typically every guest has a hot take, but I do, Stacie, what is incredible, the backwards design, we do talk about different design strategies and methods. I use design thinking with my students. What you have done in your class with your students, and this is what, for those of you listening, this is what Stacie told me when I went and talked to her after that session, when she was still sitting there kind of ideating. And that was a couple of years ago. Okay, when was that, Stacie, when we first met? Do you remember the year?
Yeah. So that was TCEA. So that was in Austin. And that was, 23?
That's what I'm thinking. It's 23. So at that point, were you only a year into what you were doing with the students?
So I had a year under my belt. And then at that point, I was really, because one of my coworkers kind of introduced me to the ed tech world.
Give her a shout out.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So Heather Brantley.
Yep.
Love me some Heather Brantley. She kind of introduced me to the ed tech world and said, hey, there are better ways to do this than just Google Drive. Let me show you some different things that are available. And so she brought me to TCEA with her that year, and I just soaked it all in.
It was like, I know, it's so interesting. The teachers that I talk to who have not been introduced to that world, and then they go for the first time. It is. I mean, I will always remember you sitting in that chair after the session, after everybody had left, and it was how I knew you were just soaking it in. You were thinking through what you had already done. So you were reflecting on your own practice, and then you were watching what I was showing on Wakelet. It's very interesting because portfolios, I talk about this often. I tell Rick this. I never intended on being like the portfolio poster teacher who would talking portfolios. It would have never been in my bingo card, but it was my own students and my own experience. It mirrors your story so much. I started from that end goal with nothing. Now, the difference is, Stacie, nobody asked me to do it. I essentially was like, ooh, what problem can I solve now that I'm in this high school full time all the time and not moving campus to campus? What can I do? But I did the exact same thing, kind of working backwards. And of course, I had to get buy-in. So I'm going to ask you about that in just a second. But I believe that if you are listening and you are a teacher who wants to do something that is different, you want to make a difference like Stacie, you want to include the community, you want to prepare students for the future. I don't care how old they are. If you need to go back and watch Amber Barton's episode, please go do that, because she talks about how little learners can be project managers. The thing is, you need to be looking at that end goal. And just like Stacie, I mean, she has essentially given you the entire outline for how to do this. You just got to go back and listen to it a couple of times. And then you build something great. But you don't build it great overnight, and you don't build it great in the first year. It takes that reflection and that feedback, and it's a loop from year to year. I know Stacie listens to her students. That was truly, for me, the pivotal moment, because I could say for 17 years I had listened to my students and heard what they were saying. But you just sometimes don't. And I'm not afraid to say that on this podcast. I wasn't truly listening to what my students needed until I started teaching the principles of IT class. It's a CTE class. I aligned that with what I was doing and then paired it with the problem I needed solving. And then thought to myself, how can I bring the community into this? How can I get buy-in? And so we did the 7 Habits, the teen version. We did book studies. I opened up the floor just like you do to let them discuss things that they probably weren't discussing in their algebra class. Now, is algebra and math important? Absolutely. Do I use it every day? Yes. But there was they were not able to see the crossover. Rick, stop.
Sorry, can I just ask, you still use algebra?
No, I wasn't meaning I use algebra. I was meaning I use math every day. Math.
Okay. I'm just clarifying because I was like, whoa, hold on. Tisha's not telling me something here.
If you met Tisha, the math student in high school, that's a fun story. Since this is a flashback rewind kind of episode, Stacie, and we want it to be fun, I'll do a little confessional here. I've not said this publicly ever, but I was not the best math student. Now, Rick is side-eyeing me here, but the thing is, I have ADHD, and you'll notice that a lot of people with ADHD do struggle in math because our brains go so fast that math doesn't go that fast. And if it is not making sense to us, we're like, okay, well, we're not doing it. But I did that so often as a sophomore in my geometry class. My teacher sat me at the very back of the room. I'm pretty sure Stacie, now, no disrespect to my teacher, but I'm pretty sure she was like almost 80. And I know I know people probably think that about us. No, Rick.
She was probably like in her 50s and you're probably that.
I'm saying, I know. There was like no perspective as an 18-year-old, but all I remember is her just being really old, and she didn't want to have anything to do with me or my struggles in math. She kind of just sat me at the back of the room and like hoped for the best. And that did not turn out well for any of us because I ended up failing a semester or 6 weeks, a grading period of geometry. And then got grounded. My parents, again, Stacie said it. She was like, our parents really didn't teach us a lot. It was just like, you're grounded. We don't care why you failed. You're done. No car, no this. You're not going anywhere with your friends. And I just remember thinking, okay, but that's not helping me pass or learn geometry. So I still felt so like, I don't know. It's definitely a wound. But I think what Stacie has done, what I did is kind of identified that and went, okay, how do we make those math classes relevant to what they're going to do later? Yes. How do we make those science classes relevant to what they're doing now? And I think if more teachers can kind of find their group of people like Stacie and I, because I didn't have anybody else thinking that with me. If they can find that, then you essentially start growing in that mindset and your students grow with you. So Stacie, my question, back to that. You had someone ask you to do this class and they gave you like hardly any tools, which is like literally life. But I want to know, did you get any pushback? I want to talk about that because that is what I want to hear. Because I know, and Rick and I talked about this yesterday, we're preparing for some presentations. Hopefully you'll have joined those presentations if you're listening. But we were talking about bees and salmon. And we were discussing that in those groups of animals, there are some rule breakers, if you will, some groups of them who are not going to follow the status quo, right, in nature. So I want to know, because this isn't a typical class and you're not doing the typical thing and you are giving your students a voice in a way that the majority of teachers might not agree with. I want to hear from you. Did you have pushback from other administrators, teachers, parents, or community members? And if you did, how did you respond to that pushback?
So I'm going to tell you that I really didn't have that much pushback at all, thankfully, because it was kind of a new thing. And every time I came up with a new idea, they were like, yeah, let's do it. The only thing that I would say in my experience was a little bit more problematic was the fact that I'm CTE in junior high. And so because it's a high school credit in a junior high school, it's the communication. going between campuses because my principal would say one thing, but then I really needed to talk to the other principal, but then it's happening on my campus. And so that was more, I
Mhm.
guess, one of the difficulties that I had to overcome at the beginning. Um, and then, of course, my first year, because in the project itself, like in the competition at the end of the year, the kids are competing for different prizes. So um, the first round is a $300 gift or gifts, plural,
Mhm.
that they choose that will help
Wow.
them in their career field. So it looks different for each of the kids.
That's amazing.
And then the overall winner, so after I get all of the round one winners, we go one more round, and all of those winners compete against each other. Um, and then that winner gets an additional $200 in prizes. So they get a total of 500, whereas the other ones get a total of 300. But they never get money. They only get the prizes because I don't want to give kids money.
Mhm.
I want
Mhm.
to give kids stuff that can help
Mhm.
them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'll let them choose what they want, right? As long as they can prove that that's what would help them in their career field.
So
Um,
I'm guessing based on that, you had some sort of budget that you were able to pull from. That was not something that I experienced, and I think this is a really it's a good topic to talk about. Anybody listening, if you aren't familiar with CTE, Career and Technology Education, those classes are going to receive, the schools are receiving more money for those classes, right? That's kind of always been the case. So I'm curious, and did you start off with a budget? Was the budget something that came in years after you had established the program? Do you get to control the amount? Like, do you get to kind of advocate for how much is in that budget for those students? Like, explain to us a little bit about how that works, because I think budgeting is a very hot topic, and another hot topic right
Yeah.
now in all schools all over. So I would love to hear that, how that worked.
So, my first year, when all of this was kind of being birthed, I did not have a budget at all. Like, I had to go
Mhm.
out and find a sponsor to sponsor the
Mhm.
competition, and so that was about 3 grand that I had to get from an outside source. So that was a little bit more problematic, obviously.
Yeah.
um, and then, thankfully, that second year that it all started, we got a CTE director where we had
Mm.
not had anyone in that position before. We had an AP at the high school that was kind of over CTE
Mhm.
and a lot of other things. So um, we didn't really have the leadership that we probably needed to, but my district is amazing and they
Yeah.
recognize that. And so they brought in a person to help out with that. And so when my CTE director came in, I'll go ahead and give a shout out to Jacob Lusk. He's a great guy. Um, he uh gave us all budgets. Like we had never had
Wow.
anything like that before. So he gave us
Wow.
budgets that we could work with, and he was like, if this is enough, great. If it's not enough, then we'll see if we can pull from somewhere else. But it was a substantial amount, so it was fine for me. I actually
You're
ended up
gonna have all of the Texas teachers wanting to go work for Jacob now.
yeah,
Jacob,
he's a really great guy.
shout out to Jacob. I mean, it is so important, and I think you've hit on something that is really unique. It doesn't happen everywhere, but I think having people buy into what you're doing, I think it does help when the district is asking you. They already know what they want. They've already kind of, that's their mindset. I think it's honestly fabulous. I want to just shout you out again. Stacie is highlighted in chapter 9 of our book. Of course, this Play at 3 podcast is not all about our book, but I do want to highlight that if you buy the book, which is available everywhere, so you just have to Google
Amazon, Etsy,
search it.
Target, Barnes and Noble.
I
I'll list them
try.
out for you,
I don't like
Tish. There's
listing them
four.
all. It's like, I don't
There's
know.
four.
It's my ADHD brain. Like that, listing it out is a waste of time. Just Google it or ChatGPT it. The chat will tell you exactly where it is. But
Yeah.
what I do want to say is, when you receive that book, you are also going to receive inside of the book a QR code. It will take you to the resources for the book. And in chapter 9, you get an entire folder. And so you can just shout out to Stacie for sharing that with you. She has shared out about her project, the course, the Employer's Choice Award. You're going to get to see that. You're going to get to review it. And if you use anything that she has given you, you must give her credit for that, because she put a lot of time
100%.
and effort into sharing that. And we're just so grateful, Stacie, that you shared that with us. So thank you officially, because we haven't got to see you since the book has come out. Really, on behalf of both of us, we're so grateful that you were
Mm-hmm.
so willing to share your story and the success that you've had with this class. I love what you do, and I feel such a connection to you, because everything you've said was what I experienced. It was like, okay, I've gotten this written out, but then you go and you actually apply it, and you're like, oh, that's not going to work how I thought it did, so I need to make adjustments. And I think in doing that, and as you were speaking, so interesting, because you said you had to go out and raise money, and I saw Rick kind of like smile. Tell me what you were
Yeah.
thinking, Rick, when Stacie said, I don't have any money, I need to go get a sponsor. Like, what were you thinking?
I was having flashbacks of early days of Wakelet, trying to get the company off the ground and move forward. But no, everything that you have said, Stacie, that being given an opportunity and trying to solve a problem within your school, to try and come up with different solutions, different ideas, something that has never been done before in the school. It's all fresh, it's all new. The amazing thing is you had the backing, which, as we've clarified, numerous people don't have, and having to go and find sponsorship, which is not an easy feat, trying to get people to give you their money. And having that support there for now 3 years, and the things that you're teaching, I mean, I resonate so much with the financial side of it, as Tish already knows, because I've taught her a few things with finances and investments and stuff.
Yes.
And I've always echoed that we need more. Loads of people have said it, that we need some more education within the financial side. And if people, the previous generations, if you're lucky enough to have a parents or grandparents who have learned these things themselves, that's the only way you're going to find out. The financial system is so difficult, and I know I've had to deal with American with our LLC. The UK's bad enough, and then I'm having to learn about American tax systems and everything, and it's frustrating. But the one thing that I'm amazed by is how you are an entrepreneur.
She is.
100,
That's exactly what I was. As she
1,000,000%.
was speaking, I thought to myself, Stacie is the poster teacher for all the teachers who don't think that they're entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
You all absolutely are. And I think it's so, I love hearing it.
Yeah.
What else stood out to you, Rick, that she said just in an because we have the AIM framework in our book, and we talk about entrepreneurship skills with students. We know if Stacie is actually out there every day, day in and day out, teaching her students all of the skills that she listed for you in the very beginning.
Yeah.
She's an entrepreneur, and she's modeling for them.
Yeah. Entrepreneur, leader, problem solver, ideator, just everything. I mean, even getting investment in, financial advisor, whatever, everything is that. And I honestly, I applaud you for everything that you've done so far. Is amazing. You are a true representation of educators worldwide, of what you're capable of, because so many people, I think this is the problem that I've seen. And as you were speaking and saying everything that you've done, people have this expectation that teachers just seem to know everything and do everything, and that they're set to a curriculum and it's all given to you. And that is not the case anywhere. And I've seen it here in the UK multiple times. There's this expectation that teachers must deliver. But when you've got 30 students just in a class, go on.
Teach more. So let's just talk about something I've learned in the EdTech space from the company business side, right? So we talk a lot about messaging, and what does messaging look like, and how are we, sharing our products with teachers, and how is that messaging coming across? And I saw something the other day. I can't remember exactly where it was, like, teach more. And I just sat there with it, and I thought to myself, are you serious? We're going to teach. How could you possibly teach more, Stacie, in your day than you already do, right? So again, I think you're right, Rick. There is a misconception. It goes back to what I was saying in the beginning with your initial question that Stacie and I both answered. What are you looking forward to at the end of school? Well, everybody has in their mind, especially the adults of the world that are not teachers, they're still thinking about school from the perspective of a student when they were in school. And I'm
100%.
so sorry. This is my hot take. You've now got me on my soapbox. I'm not going to get off of it because
before you go into it, I'm just going to represent everybody outside the classroom and say, we all know that you have a 3-month summer holiday doing nothing.
I don't know why why would you do that? Those
because
are fighting
we know
words.
it's not true.
Fighting words. And I'm being Stacie here and we're Texans. So I don't know.
2 against 1, so bring it. Come on.
Here's the thing. I just think it's so interesting to me. I do. I a lot of times, the other day somebody said, Tisha, I haven't seen you on social media. You haven't really posted. You know what? If I'm not posting, a lot of times it's because I'm consuming. And I don't always want to be the poster and creator. Sometimes I need to take the consumption way because, you know, we're creating this podcast. We are putting stuff out there. But I read a lot. And I still it frustrates me so much that parents and people who are not teachers, have never been teachers, they are, in a sense, criticizing teachers through a lens that is still the student lens. And that is absolutely unfair. And I don't like it. So this is my plea. Just stop doing that. Stop thinking that you know exactly what's happening in a school, in a classroom. You absolutely don't unless you've been doing it and you have done it for a number of years. I just think there is something to that. Like I said, and Stacie talked about it. We've talked about there are levels of grief. You are pouring your heart, soul, mind, energy, and everything into your students. And if you're not doing that with your students, you're doing it with your team or your colleagues, and you're doing it with your administrators. And then I bet this, because I know this about teachers just like Stacie, had a really great chat the other day with another Texas educator, Rachel Medrano. If you were not familiar with her, she's in Robstown ISD. And I was like, what's up? And she was like, I got these committees and I'm on and then I was asked for this committee and that committee. And what you'll find, Rick, is the entrepreneur mindset teachers are going to be asked more often to be on committees. And now not only are they teaching and responsible for the curriculum and bus duty, lunch duty, sponsorship duty, and now you're asking them to use their brain to be on 3 other committees. It is a lot of exhaustion. I just do not think people understand. And I'm here to tell you, from being in the classroom and then now being in the ed tech space, working for companies in the ed tech space for the last, 5 years, I can tell you, teaching is not like any other job you could ever have. And I've watched it. I'm sure Stacie has too. People come in and think they want to be teachers. They come in from the outside sector, the corporate sector, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a teacher. And then a year later, they're not there anymore.
But just a thought. We advocate that teachers are entrepreneurs. How many entrepreneurs are there in the world?
You'd have to tell me how many, because I'm sure you've done this research.
There's not that many. I won't go into the numbers, but there are not that many because majority of people look at an entrepreneur and say, well, you've got to build a team, you've got to manage them, you've got to pay them, you've got to build a product, you've got to make sure everything's running smoothly. As a CEO, it's exactly what a teacher does. But everybody seems to think it's life of Riley. You get loads of holidays, you're only working during class hours and not thinking about the long hours, the marking, the times that you're actually having your lunch while also doing something else at the same time. It is exactly the same as an entrepreneur CEO life.
Say that again.
You can have just lunch?
Yeah.
People do that?
No, Stacey's right. You can have just lunch because just lunch is, it's like I said with okay, Stacie, am I right or wrong? When it's summer and you're at home and you're like, oh, I can eat without being interrupted, or I can't believe I went to the bathroom 5 times today. Do you know what I mean?
I needed to. Like, I didn't even have to wait.
Yeah, I think, and then you pull that, you really start looking at that, or I do, and I think, okay, that is horrible for our self-care, for our ability to take care of other people because we're not able to take care of really basic things. It is a hot take for me, and our last 2 guests, Rick, have definitely gotten me
They've been absolutely
on
fantastic.
My soapbox. They've been fantastic.
It's been fantastic. I think one of the questions, Stacie, that I've got just before we go into Juice Box, there's your little hint, Tish. Obviously, you're doing curriculum that is not to what the normal expectation of state standards or anything like that. But What would you say to people who currently don't have that in place, who don't have these courses of understanding finance, understanding community, building businesses, portfolios, all these different things? What would you say to someone that may have been a little bit resistant, aren't really looking at it? What would you say to them to say, you need this in your school?
So there's a couple of different ways I could take that. That's a really good question. So if you don't have the opportunity to have a course like this in your campus, join the millions, because there's a lot of
Yep.
other schools that don't have that opportunity. What I would tell you is that there are so many different ways that you can manipulate's a bad word, but I like it. Manipulate the course, like your course curriculum, to add in ways that show kids how you use this in the real world. Like I say, I don't use Algebra 2, and I try really hard not to, y'all. Like I really try hard not to use any kind of higher math. But I will tell you that, like, when I teach financial math, there are different equations that you have to figure out, like that you have to do in order to find out what compound interest is and how to figure out how much you're going to make in this particular account over 40 years with compound interest. That's kind of a big thing. Like, you probably want to know that, or at least you want to know how to get there. If you have forgotten that in the future, right? You need to know the steps in order to learn again if you need to. And so I would say to all those teachers, manipulate what you can in your curriculum to add in those things that you know are going to create buy-in with your kids. If I'm teaching chemistry, and I'm just going to tell you, like, I probably use chemistry every day in my kitchen. Do I call it that?
That's true.
Yes.
No, I
Yeah.
do not call it that. When I go outside, I use chemistry when I don't have sunscreen on. Like, that's a thing, but I don't call it that. So if you manipulate it and you talk about it in a way that makes them understand the importance of it into their everyday life, now we have a little bit more buy-in. Now you're preparing them for the future, and they can see that, right? Integrate different, like, have a unit on whatever you're teaching and how different careers impact that area, right? So if you are teaching, I don't know, English 4, I'm just going to say, like, there are very few times where I have to analyze a literary work of art for tone, but I have to analyze emails for tone every day.
100%.
Yeah.
Ooh. Or
Yeah.
even social media posts, or even
Right.
when you're in ChatGPT, yes, it is that critical
Yeah.
thinking.
Yes.
I love what you've said, and I just want to hit on it again so that everybody understands. Stacie just said, and we've said it in the book, but we didn't use your words, and I just want to say your words again. Manipulate the curriculum so that your students have a buy-in, so that they will take that information, hold on to it, add to it, level it up, and be prepared for the future. I don't know, Stacie, that is like the best piece of advice. Anything else you want to top up on that?
Oh, man. I mean, if you have the opportunity to have a course like this one, I would say absolutely go for it, because it is the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. At the beginning of the year, I see these kids who are very timid, and, they walk in and they're like, oh, she's got purple hair. She's okay, whatever, right? And then you see them where they can't even look you in the eye when they shake your hand. But then at the end of the year, they're going in front of a panel of judges, people they don't even know, 40, 50 years older than they are, and having to throw themselves out there and, like, sell themselves, right, in order to get what they want, which is what we have to do. Right?
I
Like,
love that
you
you've
have to
said
sell
that, because
yourself.
I said that so often when I was teaching, my group of kids. I did it for 5 years, and I remember saying on one of the early webinars that I did, I had never been able as an educator to see the seeds that I had planted in August become full grown, like, oak trees by May. And that is what the class did. And it was, I was facilitating it. And I think you'll agree with me, Stacie. We were designing it. We designed it. We are facilitating it, but the students are really the ones leading it. And they learn then to lead themselves and really see what they're capable of. I agree. So you have some really amazing students, and we did get to interview one of your students for our book, but I would love for you to shout out some of the students that come to mind that maybe you recognize the most growth from August to May. Because I always had those students where they would come in the same way and they'd be like, I'm just taking this class because I'm pretty sure it's going to be easy and, I'll do the work. And they got in there real quick and were like, oh, this is not a normal class. But at the end, really appreciated what we did. So do you have any students that you want to shout out before we move on?
Oh man, just anybody, all of my kiddos who have chosen to compete in the Employer's Choice, because I give them the opportunity. They don't have to do the Employer's Choice Award. They can interview in front of our campus administrators, and they still do their portfolios. They still do everything else. They still have to dress up for the interview and conduct themselves professionally, but they just interview with people they kind of already know. And so all of those kids, all of my kids who have put themselves out there and just gone for it.
Yeah.
No holes barred, right?
Yeah.
Just gone for it. I commend every single one of them. And I tell them that every year, like, it is such a huge thing that you have even tried.
Yeah.
Like, that you can put on your resume, right? That I participated in the Employer's Choice. Even if you didn't get anything, even if you weren't one of the winners, you participated in it and you did it. And that is something you didn't have to do, but you did anyway.
It's teaching them resilience. It's teaching them to take the risk of doing the thing, even knowing that you may not get the thing back in that moment. There will be a point in their life that they will come back to that and think, oh, I did that. And so since I did that, I can do this, right? So it becomes a reference point for them so that there is that loop of risk taking, which is what we want them to do. Speaking of risk taking, I want to talk about, so it's Juice Box Confessional time. So if you were fast forwarding to this part of the podcast and this is the only reason you're listening, it's absolutely fine. Here we are.
Should I put a time at the beginning of the videos every time for Juice Box?
You should be like, okay, Juice Box Confessional.
Don't
is
care
happening
about
at this
everything
moment.
else. Juice Box is here.
No, we do have listeners, and I do want to shout them out. I want to take this moment. You've kind of brought it to my attention, Rick, but we have some really incredible, dedicated listeners who are listening to these podcasts. They are listening. I've gotten so much feedback, and maybe that's what we'll do on our next episode. We'll kind of go through that feedback. Some people have said, Tisha, I love it when I can hear you just speak freely about whatever is on your mind. And I think it is interesting because as a teacher, I was always kind of making sure I was a great role model for my students. And then working for any ed tech platform, you're kind of representing them. On this podcast, I will get on a soapbox because, I own the rights to this podcast.
We get the raw Tisha every time.
You do get the raw Tisha, and it isn't even that. Like, I'm really not out of control, right? Like, I'm not on a plane getting escorted out of the plane. I'm just saying.
Sure.
Hey guys, yes, I'm sure. So I do want to just shout out those listeners. We hear you. Any comment that you comment on Spotify or YouTube or any message that you're sending Rick and I via email or on social media, know that we're seeing it. We are appreciative. Share the podcast with the educators around you who you think would want to listen to these particular episodes. We are choosing our guests based on your want and need. And some of you need things, but you aren't able to say that. Whether you are working for a district and you can't be on the podcast, totally up to you. I know we've had some who have said, I can't do this yet, but we're going to come back to you on it. So I just want to shout you all out. If you're listening, if you have been a guest with us, if you want to be a guest with us, Rick will put all of that information in the show notes. And so risk-taking, Juice Box Confessional, Stacie, just to give you some insight, Play at 3, and we'll just remind everyone, Play at 3 is a name that Rick and I came up with for our LLC. But we had a vision when we did that. And it was about education. We care about education. I've worked in education. Rick has been a student of, in education, but he also worked for Wakelet, is in that educational technology space, cares about the technology that is sitting in front of students today, and being a part of designing that and leading that. And then the play part is that we want to have fun, because if we're not having
Always.
fun, like I know you had fun with your kids. I know you did. I know the purple hair for me is a dead giveaway, first of all. Okay. And we're going to talk about that in a second. And then the 3 is really representing the emerging technologies. Web3, AI, metaverse. Like we could go into all of that, but that is how we came up with play at 3. And of course, the play part I love, because I don't get to do a lot of play. But if you were at my desk right now, I have like all kinds of toys, and behind me I have like a Rubik's Cube and some Play-Doh, and I don't know, play is very important, and I think even as adults we need to remember. So I want to know, on this Juice Box Confessional, what was your purple hair moment growing up? Okay, so something that you did that totally went against what everybody else is doing, that gave you this like individuality. Like, what was that moment and how did it make you feel?
Oh, man. Golly, you didn't even prepare me for that at all. I think we all have teachers in our lives that have helped us along the way and kind of made the most impact. And I was very, very blessed to have a number of different people in my life. But I was actually sick a lot whenever I was a kid. I was in the hospital a lot. And so I was very close to our counselors at our campus. And I come from like a medium small town, like not super small in Texas. Well, this was actually in Louisiana, but where every administrator, pretty much most of the teachers and almost every single one of the counselors was in my parents' Sunday school class at church every Sunday.
Yeah.
So we so I had a lot of eyes on me at all times. And so as I was sick, I had a lot of people I could go to. And there were a few moments there that were kind of iffy, that kind of caused me to consider some different things about my health and about what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. And I think just those people in my life at that point kind of helped to guide me in the direction that that I'm in today. So I didn't set out to be a teacher, but I actually have a degree in Spanish, not in teaching at all.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
totally different, right?
Yeah.
My last name is White. Yeah. So
That's so funny.
So it kind of just fell into place. Like I
Yeah.
I didn't get a job in the Spanish industry really, and so I was like, well, I know everybody at this school, so I'll just go back and teach Spanish. And then I just kind of fell in love with teaching, and it kind of just progressed from there. So yeah, I mean, there wasn't really an aha purple hair moment, but it was more like over time, just kind of my growth and realizing how intentional I need to be about where I want to go and how I need to get there.
That's amazing. That's amazing advice. Okay. This is also what I want to know. Rick, be ready, because this question's for you too. He's sitting there as if he's not going to get any of the questions.
I'm just sitting looking pretty. That's all I was doing.
I love to throw you off. Okay, so for both of you. But Stacey's going to go first. Okay, so I want to know. So this is a Juice Box Confessional. I want to know, when you were in junior high, so 6th, 7th, 8th grades, what was your favorite lunch? Whether it was something that you got to take to school or something that you were really excited that the cafeteria was going to make, and all of your friends were like, it's this day, right? What was that lunch for you that just made your day, made your week, and you were ready?
Okay, so y'all are going to laugh at this. It wasn't in junior high, I was in high school. But our campus, this was pre-Obama era, so the cafeterias at school could cook whatever they wanted to. So, our cafeteria ladies were like super, super Southern, right? Like just like back home in the woods, kind of cooking. It was amazing. Every Wednesday we had fried chicken, like legit fried chicken.
Mhm.
Oh, it was the best. And they made mashed potatoes to go with it, and those school rolls. Everybody,
Yes.
like, my mouth is watering right
Yep.
now. Like, I'm
You're not the only one,
I
to be
bet all of
honest.
our listeners,
Yeah.
especially our listeners in Texas, are probably going to reminisce with you. And yes, the interesting thing is, Stacie, so great point. Before Obama changed all the things, because my students, it used to be, I cannot remember how the kids would say it, but in a sense, it was instead of fried chicken, it was they were making the chicken strips. So in the same exact way that they were making the fried chicken, but they were chicken strips. And yes, it was mashed potatoes and gravy and corn, and it was like, today is that day, and the kids would be talking about it. The minute they got to school, they'd still be talking about it at 7th period.
Yep.
Yes.
We actually had to have more rules put in our campus in high school because we had a kid break his arm. Like the stampede
To get there, to get to the
into
food.
the
Yes.
cafeteria and get there first was
Yes.
legit, y'all.
They
Like,
would run.
it was real.
No, it was
And
like
so-
they could have made it. Honestly, Stacie, the cafeteria ladies of the world, if you're listening and if you know one, send this to them at this point, because you guys could make all kinds of cool things with all of the knowledge that you have. Rick, did you know that for my class reunion, this is a true story, Stacie, for my class reunion in September, we were reminiscing in our class Facebook group, and because of course I'm the event planner, party planner for our reunions, I was like, hey, what's something that you guys would really want, like retro for our reunion? And what came up for our class, every single one of them was like, oh my God, we want those peanut butter brownies that they used to serve in our trays in the cafeteria. And everybody said that. And so I put a little all call out to my class. And ironically, one of my classmates said, oh, my aunt worked in the cafeteria back then, and she's the recipe for these peanut butter brownies. And so his aunt made peanut butter brownies from the cafeteria to bring to our reunion. And I'm not even kidding. They were the happiest adults in the world for this one brownie. And I think it's so interesting that food can bring back so many of those happy memories. But yes, the students at my school, they would literally, I would get so mad at them because it would be like they would be at the door ready to run the race when the bell rang. And as soon as the bell rang, they were there, and they were like, Miss Poncio, I was third in line today. Well, I hope you didn't hurt anybody getting there, but that's a great one. Rick, I'm interested to see what your story is and how it compares to mine and Stacey's Texas food.
I mean, we're not there with fried chicken or, like barbecue style or anything like that. But I have to say that during primary school, which is, it'll be grade 1 to 6 for us. So we have primary and secondary school. Primary school, there was always the treat of when you had the sponge cakes. And it's just, all it is just a layer of sponge, a little bit of icing. But that was like the highlight. That with a bit of, yeah.
I'm just laughing.
You know what I know.
No, it's just making me laugh because I'm thinking like Stacey and I are talking about fried chicken and like people almost
I'm
killing
talking
each
dessert.
other. And you're like sponge cake with some icing. It's very
Our school
British.
was
Rick.
our school was not about everybody go running to the canteen. It was about, right, you're going for lunch, now stand in line and we're going in orderly, because there would probably be stampedes. They were prepared. But in secondary school, there was two things. One, and I think you've got it in the US, potato smileys.
We do not know
Smileys? You don't?
We don't know what that is. Do you know what
Yeah.
that
Okay.
is?
Yeah, I know what it is. They
What is
they
it?
make them in our cafeterias now. They're
What
like
are they?
they're like French fries in them, like with a smiley face.
Yeah, they're
Like,
just
they're like
little,
potatoes.
little
Yeah, but they've got a
faces, just-
smiley face. Yeah.
I'll send it to you after we've done this
Okay,
podcast, so
okay.
you can see what I'm talking about.
We'll link it.
But
we'll link it.
basically, during break, they would only serve at a break. You'd have 20 minutes. Yes, there would be a stampede to go get these, because there would only be a certain amount. The other one, we call them slush puppies.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But
We know what
you
those
know
are.
them as ices.
We know what
or-
they. No, they
yeah.
were called slush puppies at All Sips, where I grew up.
Do you have slush puppies?
Yeah, I know exactly
Not
what it is.
Slurpees or ices. Okay.
Well, there
I
are
Googled
Slurpees
it
and
and they-
ices.
Okay.
Growing
I Googled
up, I knew
slush
I
puppy and
used
it
to
said it
have
doesn't exist, but
I used to have a slush puppy little machine at my house. Yes, I know what it is.
Oh,
I
okay.
know.
All right. Show off.
You had a slush puppy
Well-
machine at your house?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's impressive we got it at school. I mean,
I know, Stacey. We won't go any more into my childhood. My parents were very strict in some regards. We've talked about that in the podcast, and they were very, fun in other regards. But
Sounds
well,
more fun.
Stacey, we have had the best time. I have this is a very quick. You have to do a quick fire question, very last one, and then we're gonna wrap
Okay.
it up. But if your classroom had a '90s theme song every time students walked in, what would it be?
Oh, oh my
Can-
gosh.
Can be 80s or 70s or 60s if there's one there.
The New Kids on the Block for sure.
Oh yeah, which one?
Oh my gosh.
Hangin' Tough.
Yes, that one. Yeah.
Hanging
Yeah.
Tough. We're going to link that in the show notes. And then you know what, Rick, on the next episode, because Stacey has led us here, we are going to talk about my New Kids on the Block experiences just recently. So yes, I think that's the Hangin' Tough is a great song. And you are also hanging tough. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us. I know taking time out of your day to record this podcast was a lot. We hope that you enjoy your summer off, but and we hope that we get to see you very, very soon. Again, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to tell the listeners before we let them all go?
Oh man, I'm so grateful to be a part of educators worldwide, really, because we are the rock stars and we are doing it no matter what. So kudos to you guys who are out there and working hard and not getting noticed. We notice you. We
Yes.
love you. Thank you
Yes.
for all your hard work.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Thank you, Stacey. Rick, great place to end it.
Yeah, I think first off, Stacey, if people want to follow you on socials, where's best to follow you?
So I'm on Facebook and Instagram and X, and my call sign is at Amazing Mrs. White. No periods.
Amazing. Those will be in the show notes. Tish, I'm not going to even ask yours because you always take the mick out of mine that mine aren't consistent, but everything is in the show notes. So if you want to follow me or Tisha or the Playhead 3 podcast, we are available on all platforms, pretty much wherever. Just Google. But anyway, till next time, Stacey, thank you for being on our episode, and we will see the rest of you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you for being a part of this episode. Continue the conversation with us online. Subscribe and follow, and let us know if you'd like to join as a guest or if there's someone you'd like to hear from.
We'd love to connect with you on X, Instagram, and TikTok. All links and show notes will be available in the episode description. Until next time, keep learning, growing, and playing.